One of the reasons why I'm not satisfied to negotiate on certain terms in the United States on this regulation that I support is I know that families will just keep shopping doctors until they find the approval that they want. I know because that's something that I did. And this is really easy for people to conflate. Not just me, but other young people who are going through this. I'm becoming my own person now. People who don't take cross-sex hormones have the same process. It's called completing adolescence. But because I've had an intervention, instead of me thinking, hey, this is a natural thing that I would have done anyway, I think, this is working, right? So I'm attributing to this intervention my ability to become my own person instead of just the natural process of maturing. With any hope, the medicalization will go down dramatically. But as long as there's a single jurisdiction anywhere in the world, people are going to go there and access it. That's what happened before, and it'll happen again. Yeah. So this is always going to be present with us from now on. I do think that we need to just focus on reframing it from you're becoming your true self, or you're achieving transition to you are especially unusual among your own kind.
So welcome, Cori, to the podcast. This is a very special occasion for me. It's the first time we've ever actually talked, I do believe.
Well, it's great to talk to you. I'm so impressed by all the research that you've done and exposed so many of the secrets that have happened in this industry. So thank you for everything that you've done.
Oh, thank you.
Also, thank you, Stella. Genspect is a pillar, and nothing that we've been able to accomplish would have been able to happen without getting that momentum started. You are a but-for cause for everything good that's happening.
Oh, Cori, that means the world to me. I didn't see that coming. Thank you.
Let me talk about what happened yesterday. I don't know if this jumped out to Stella or not, but this is what happened to me yesterday. So we interviewed Quentin Van Meter for the podcast, and he was telling this remarkable story of the first trans-identified young person. He's a pediatric endocrinologist. First trans-identified young person, teenager, that he saw in 1993. And he was a boy, 13-year-old boy, I think, and he wanted to go on estrogen, and Quentin Van Meter had no idea what to do with this kid. And when he was telling that story, I thought, goodness me, how did that boy come to think that he was a girl in 1993 before any of us even had any idea that that was a thing? And then after we were done, I was like, okay, now I'm going to prepare for tomorrow's podcast. And I read your story, and you identified, you thought you were a girl, identified as a girl in 94. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, sure. Just some refinement of that, because that's more or less true. I guess there's an important difference between identifying as a girl and wanting to become a girl, right? So I was growing up in an environment that I was one of the youngest children in my class. I was the person who was picked out for the bullies to beat up on. My parents were not particularly helpful at instilling management skills. So the problem, I unwittingly exacerbated the problem in some cases. And over time, I felt more and more alienated from boys. And there weren't really any men to coach me or provide that sort of male guidance. And what I came to believe is that if I could become a girl, if I could avoid manhood, if I could not have to take that on, that I would actually be able to develop and maintain friendships and other relationships, because that seemed to me like the only avenue that was open. So that's a little bit different from believing that I'm a girl, but I think it's an important distinction. But that is an aspiration I developed by the end of elementary school.
And what year would that have been?
Probably around 1989, 1990.
And were you like Bev Jackson gives us grief for saying this, but were you gender non-conforming? Were you feminine in any way?
It's easy to make things up, right? It's easy to confabulate. It's easy to identify all the things where I was. Like rough and tumble play was terrifying. Was not my thing. Very much prefer to read books. I had a collection of stuffed animals that were my absolute, like I was in love with my stuffed animals and would take care of them. Hated dolls though, found them creepy as anything. Maybe that's because the dolls in the 1980s. I don't know.
In fairness, I think that's an objective, almost scientific analysis of dolls. Keep going.
There was an ugly phase, right? I don't know.
Creepy.
But no, I didn't want to do doll's hair or anything like that. But very sensitive heart, and what I was not a girly child. I was a really sensitive boy. That's hard for boys who are sensitive. Life is hard, right? And it's easy to mistake being a sensitive boy for not being a boy.
And may I ask, do you remember when you first heard the concept of transsexualism?
Yes. So I saw something on TV about it, and it blew my mind because I was not a sophisticated thinker. I was not really trying to understand the repercussions of what was happening. It's just that I saw that there were people who were able to realize the thing that I sought to change about my life. And so it went from, I pray to God that I will wake up and that I will not have to be a boy anymore, to, here are things that I can practically achieve. Like people have done this. I can go out and try to do it myself.
Do you remember what that was and how old you were when you saw it?
I don't remember exactly what it was. Probably it was something like the Donahue Show, because I do remember the Donahue Show being on my television. That was something that my mom would watch in the afternoons. I would see that coming home from school. So it was probably something like that, and it was probably middle school.
It's funny, Cori, we're the same age, me and you. And I wanted to be a boy, you wanted to be a girl. You're in America, I'm in Ireland, and we went very different paths, obviously. And I remember kind of coming across, do I specifically remember, it's more like you, I imbibed it or something, the concept. But what I distinctly remember, it was, in my view, clownish. It was a clown. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't a serious, it was a kind of tabloid, look at the state of that. And I was like, oh my God, like it was so not opening any doors for me because of the way it was portrayed. I wonder, does that matter? Like, I wonder, did that shape me?
That's really interesting. So I grew up in Reno, Nevada. If you're familiar with the book, The Grapes of Wrath, it's about settler families that came over. That was my mother's parents, basically.
Wow.
Her grandparents were part of that transition, moved to the West. So my model of womanhood or femininity was women who were out putting their hands on the land, changing things, planting plants, like raising chickens, like not this sophisticated urban fashion plate woman, but the women who were not mannish, but they were definitely hands-on, practical, serious. What I saw on TV, I was like, well, that's that's what you would see on a coast, but that's not my life. My life is serious women doing serious work, and I realized that could be it's not they're not fashion models. They're tough women who, for the most part, got up and started doing chores.
I'm always really interested in how people collide with the idea. Like, I think the whole medical scandal, the whole contagion, everything, it's the idea. And what you said about you saw on television that it was a possibility. Before that, you just thought life would be better if you were a girl, or you would be happier, you fit in. But then you collided with the idea that it was possible, and that sent you in a different direction. But then does that mean you showed up to a therapist when you received this diagnosis of, it would have been gender identity disorder, I suppose? Did you show up saying you wanted to be a girl, or you thought you were a girl, or did somebody put that label on you?
No, so this is before gender identity disorder was formalized. I don't remember if it was transsexualism or gender dysphoria or something like that was more the term that was used in the early
Probably
90s.
transsexualism. Yeah.
I think
Transsexualism could have been it.
Yeah.
it existed for children, though. It was transsexualism in DSM-3 and then gender identity disorder of childhood. Those were the two in
Yeah.
DSM-3. So
In DSM-3, really interesting.
yeah,
Was DSM-3 even out in... So
it
I would
was
have been 15 years old.
1980. 1980 was
Okay.
DSM-3.
So I guess that's what it would have been then.
Okay.
You know, what kills me is I was able to get all of my records from my psychologist. She made a copy of everything for me.
Whoa.
And that was when I lived in Reno to go to college. And I had other personal stuff in there. I had like glamour photographs of me when I was 18 years old that are
Wow.
you know, very nostalgic. And somebody broke into my car and stole a bunch of stuff out of it,
Oh no.
including all
Oh
of that
no.
documentation.
Oh.
So they probably saw it, thought it was trash, and threw it away. But
Oh no.
Heartbreaking.
yeah, but before that happened, I was able to go through those records. I saw the psychologist when I was in the second or third grade or so, because I was being picked on, and I couldn't form relationships with any of my male classmates for sure. My parents and the school wanted me to stop hanging out with girls. Like they wanted me to differentiate or whatever it was. My psychologist told my parents that the reason that I was having such a difficult time with maturing is because they had relationship problems that they weren't solving. And so they were mostly spending their time fighting with each other and not raising their kids. So when I was 15 and I came out to my mom and I said I want to be a girl, she brought me back to go to the person that you already had experience with. Go back to her, and that's where I got the diagnosis. So she got to see me at these different stages of my development and made the assessment that I had, I guess, gender identity disorder, whatever it would have been in a minor at that age. When I got that diagnosis, then I was prohibited from seeing her anymore. So it was the same pattern from when I was younger, and I was prohibited from having that support because she attributed to my parents' responsibility. Same thing. The diagnosis was bad, so I didn't get any more support. I mentioned the idea of but for earlier in a positive way, Stella, but I think sometimes about the but fors that brought me on the path that I'm on.
Could I ask, did you become obsessed with getting medical transition? I remember myself and Sasha interviewed Anne Lawrence, and I was like, oh my God, like some people were like a tank rolling ahead. Were you like that, or was it more gradual kind of, this seems to be the road laid out before me?
Once I had a plan, I did what I could to execute it. I didn't run into a lot of opposition, so I wasn't tested in such a way that would really force me to try to overcome anything. But I will mention something that I don't talk about very often, which is that in order to have the surgery, the genital reconstruction surgery, I had to have 2 letters of approval. And the second psychologist I saw did not give me a letter. He said he did not think that I was a candidate for it. And so I just found a third psychologist. And so one of the reasons why I'm not satisfied to negotiate on certain terms in the United States on this regulation that I support is I know that families will just keep shopping doctors until they find the approval that they want. I know because that's something that I did.
What you're talking about, Stella, that all-consuming obsession, I always file that away under the autogynephile category. Like Anne Lawrence was is a GP, and after Jurgensen in the 1950s, sexologists experienced this enormous deluge of autogynephilic men just fixated and absolutely obsessively.
I know that. However, there's these new cohorts, and you and I have discussed the overvalued idea, Mia, and
Yeah.
the females, the girls, they are like, get out of my way. I'm going to transition. It is the answer to all my dreams. It is going to make me happy. So I know there's the autogynephilic train, but there are other ways to be obsessed.
Yeah.
And it is kind of interesting among the gay males, how it unfolds for them.
If you started from scratch and you took a group of sexologists and a group of neurologists and a group of psychologists and said, develop an etiology, each one of those groups it would be a useful etiology. It would be within their discipline, and they would be good models for explaining why people have these cross-sex ideations. People who are familiar with child psychology know that the adolescent brain works a lot differently than the adult brain. It has a lot less experience, and when you're going through puberty, parts of your brains are still not developed quite the same. And I tend to believe, and again, I don't know, maybe this is a self-serving rationalization, I'm not sure, but I think adolescents are not good at thinking through things very well in a way that deserves special attention on the adolescent development process separately from the adult process.
I mean, instant gratification, that's what guides adolescence, right? But I think as well in today, of course, it's being sold to them as the miracle cure, transition, and you'll be happy. Look at what's going on TikTok. But I think in your time, it wasn't desirable. Am I correct? In the 90s, transition wasn't sold as a miracle cure, was it?
No, this was so underground that there wasn't even any popular discourse about it, especially not for teenagers.
I do know somebody who is about 6 years younger than me. He was a gay male in an environment, a cultural context that it was so prohibitive in Ireland, a specific type of culture. It was so prohibited to be gay. It really was. And I knew him very well, and I still know him very well. He's in his early 40s now. He dressed up as a girl. He had a secret alter life as a girl. And, he had a very, very difficult life. He, ended up as in prostitution, dressed as a girl. And, it was a really difficult life for a lot of reasons. But, I was talking to him recently in his early 40s, and he said, we were talking about, could he have medically transitioned? You know what I mean? He didn't. He was like, still a little bit rueful, thinking, I wonder what that life would have been like. Now obviously I have a lot to say about this, but I was interested just to hear him, that it lingers as a thought. He reminds me of where you would have been at, if you follow me. It was just, the door was opened and it never quite closed for him. Well, he's moved on, but it was interesting that he wasn't 100% that it couldn't have been a road he went down,
Can we talk about the bill that you just mentioned, that you no compromise or anything? Because I actually don't know what that is. Can you tell me what that is?
Sure. In the United States, because the states all have their own government systems as well as the federal government, it's very much a patchwork of laws. So while many of your listeners might be familiar with the fact that Donald Trump created an executive order that prohibited federal funds from being used for transition, a lot of the states still had support or it was legal in the states to do this. The executive order does not have the binding force of legislative law, and it can't override state law. I work with a number of activists in the United States to go state to state and work on similar bills, but they may have differences between them. But the fundamental property of these bills is to prevent the use of puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones in minors, and to prevent any surgical procedures to create cross-sex appearances in minors. And so there's a group of these bills, and depending on the state, they might have various differences in their provisions.
And so you're non-negotiable on what aspect of it? What's the negotiation going on?
In Texas, for example, the Democrats, when it became crystal clear that this bill was going to pass, the Democrats said the problem is with the bad providers, not the good providers. So if we can just let's just say that as long as they get enough letters of recommendation, then they can still have these procedures. And the Democrats were even at the point of saying, well, we will create a formal review board for every one of these patients to ensure that this patient has been properly evaluated before starting any medicalization. Like we'll formalize this whole thing. Just let us keep doing it. We'll build all of the oversight that you say is missing. But what I know is that as long as it's possible to do this, the oversight mechanisms are just going to be hacked. For example, they would say, well, if you haven't worked with trans patients, you don't have the qualifications to be on the oversight board. But if you do work with trans kids and you're on the oversight board, then you're going to be extremely amenable to medicalizing children, right? So none of these measures that the answer is go get a second or third opinion will work, because there are enough people out there. Like there's a project here called Gallup, the gender access letter, gender affirming letter access project, I think is what it is. A whole bunch of licensed therapists who have agreed that anybody who comes to them asking for a letter for medical support will just get it. So there's enough actors that we have to say, well, that's not an option. We can't do that.
I've heard of therapists giving out these letters at conferences and at events and festivals, if you follow me. But to finish the story, because I'm very conscious of the audience who don't know your story, could we just go, just tell a little bit about that? I do want to move into the extraordinary work you're doing. You're doing some amazing work in recent years. You know what I mean? Like the actual practical activism, as you called it. But yeah, could you just tell us, you went ahead and you got, as far as I know, you went ahead when you were 19 and
Yes, I
you
did.
medicalized. Yeah, could you just say a little bit so that people can know the full stories and where you're at now?
Yeah. So in 1993, I started taking estrogen. In 1994, I had genital surgery. As a 19-year-old, I thought, I'm done. I finished. I did everything that I'm supposed to do. I can move on with my life now, put all this phase behind me, and become an adult woman. And I had a lot of momentum going into this, and so it carried me through for a couple of years. In fact, it became a lot easier for me to have self-confidence and to go and meet people and to develop friendships. In fact, I did become more outgoing, and this is really easy for people to conflate, not just me, but other young people who are going through this. I'm becoming my own person now. People who don't take cross-sex hormones have the same process. It's called completing adolescence. But because I've had an intervention, instead of me thinking, hey, this is a natural thing that I would have done anyway, I think, this is working, right? So I'm attributing to this intervention my ability to become my own person instead of just the natural process of maturing. I had the momentum, and then after a couple of years, I was like, this really isn't working. I really don't feel like I'm a woman, and like I feel subhuman now because I'm definitely not a man, and I'm not a woman. I'm like outside of. I'm more alienated than I've ever been because I can't finish what I started.
Have you ever heard As Hakim's like trajectory, the gender dysphoria, transgender euphoria, transgender dysphoria? He has that. Would you say that's what you went through?
Maybe. This term euphoria, I know, is like a modern term. I never felt gender euphoria per se. I felt the freedom, a sense of freedom of not being tied to my past. I felt the ability to reinvent and start fresh and start new. I don't know that that was specifically tied to gender euphoria, but it was the sense of freedom. And that's relatable, at least that part. But yeah, when you realize that this is all superficial, and it is, all of the medicalization is superficial, and all of the identity portion is a rationalization of why you don't fit in with the other members of your sex. When you haven't accepted that that's true yet, and you're still trying to make it work, it is a horrible, horrible feeling. I don't know if I'd call it gender dysphoria, but it's definitely depressing.
Yeah. We run groups called Beyond Trans where detransitioners meet, and some of them are ambivalent about their transition and they're still trans identified, and some of them are lost in transition. Some of them are still identifying as trans. But for yourself, there must have been a curve, and then ultimately, I've watched you, I suppose, you've come through quite a few different waves. It takes years. Must be 30 years since you medically transitioned. And so could you just give us a quick kind of whistle top? Because I know people think, oh, they're all going to come out after 5 years. And I'm like, yeah.
No, that's not going to happen.
No.
The thing that I really wish people would understand is, especially for young people who transition, you start making friendships. Some of these are going to be lifetime friendships. There are going to be children who are born and who get to know you in that new sex role and who identify you that way. There's going to be people added to your life over and over and over and over that are weaved into that identity that you've created. And those are meaningful relationships. Some of them are beautiful relationships. Like, some of the best moments of your life are going to be during you being in this transition state. And the idea that, oh, that's all, that doesn't count, that's all superficial, you have to throw that all away to start over with, is not an integrated mindset. So to actually move on in a healthy way, you have to integrate all of those things. And just because you do not have this trans identification anymore does not mean you have to hate everything that you experienced. You can still, it's part of who you are. So my viewpoint is, you have to think about this as another step in the journey of your life, and not a refutation of some decisions that you made or were made for you when you were young. Otherwise, it's just angst, right?
Can I ask you, you don't consider yourself a detransitioner, though, do you? Or what do you even think of the term detransition? Right, there you go.
I don't use that term. Well, it's I can't undo anything.
Right.
I can move forward, but I cannot reset. And there are people who don't medicalize, or who medicalize for such a short time, that effectively they can reset.
Yeah.
Where their period of transition is more social than medical, and that doesn't mean that it's not a significant event in their life, but they can move on from it pretty easily. I can't. I never can. And I don't like the term detransition, because it seems to imply a reset that I can't have.
I understand completely, but that's a really important point about why many people get fixated on the detransition rate as a way to prove that this is an unethical medical treatment, but that's not the way to measure it at all.
Genspect's Bigger Picture conference series returns for its 4th landmark international event this September, the 27th and 28th, Saturday and Sunday, in Albuquerque in New Mexico. At this time, we're not just analysing problems, we're shaping the solution. We're looking for a way forward, and we've chosen the best speakers, the best leading thinkers of our generation to discuss how we can move the dial. With the theme Live Not by Lies, Conversation for a Culture in Crisis, this year's conference tackles one of the most urgent challenges of our time: how to speak truth in the face of conformity, confusion, and institutional pressure. As the politicisation of sex and gender continues to divide societies and derail thoughtful discourse and destroy loving and engaged families, this groundbreaking counterpoint to WPATH, brings together the world's leading thinkers, clinicians, policymakers, lawyers, politicians, and psychologists to forge a path that is ethical, evidence-based, and grounded in reality. Abigail Schreier will expose the hidden consequences of bad therapy. Dr. Lisa Littmer will present her latest groundbreaking research. Lionel Shriver lays bare how society's fixation on trans identity distorts truth and undermines fundamental freedoms. Peter Boghossian will present Truth Over Lies, bold conversations in a fractured culture. Dr. Patrick Lappert will discuss the impact of trans surgery, while Dr. Quinton Van Meter will discuss the impact of hormones. Following defining events in Killarney, Ireland, in Denver, Colorado, in Lisbon, Portugal, we're now coming to Albuquerque in New Mexico. This is more than just a conference, it's a call to action. Join us for 2 days of unflinching honesty, rigorous evidence, and solution-focused collaboration. It's time to move the dial, and you need to be in the room. Visit genspect.org to secure your place.
I wanted to ask you, you're going to be speaking in Albuquerque at our conference, and I can't wait. You really were so powerful when you spoke in Denver. It was so powerful. It really was. You're a brilliant speaker. And so, the title is very interesting. You always come up with things that make me think. Authenticity over evidence, metaphysical trends in trans rights activism. And I'm leaning into this authenticity over evidence because that's exactly how it's going. Arguably the debate has moved way beyond evidence-based for a lot of the trans contingent, and they're talking about rights-based medicine. They don't care about the evidence.
They've never cared about the evidence.
Oh, I know. They'll use anything, but they used to use that phrase. They used to say, I trust the science. Now they're like, this is a human rights issue. And they're getting places with this point. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us where you're going to go in a little bit of what you're going to speak about,
Sure.
About that?
So I started giving testimony in 2022. And every single time that I've given testimony on any of these bills, including the sports bills, which are less, less about the medicine, or indirectly about the medicine anyway, every time there'd be a clergy member in a collar opposing me on the opposite side of me, right? And sometimes their testimony would be just completely in line with the trans activist line of that era, giving the facts and figures. Every major medical organization supports this, yada, yada, yada. But the clergy members, and I would talk to people one-on-one, I talk to people a lot. Why does this matter? Well, we want to help ensure that people are able to become their true and authentic selves. Okay, all right. I didn't think about it very much. But at the time, I was like, okay, there's just religious people. But why? Every single time I would show up, there'd even be prayer circles where there'd be 8 or 9 or 10, this is in Texas, clergy members praying the whole day in a prayer circle for the legislature to not regulate sex changes for children. Why? It is because they have developed a belief that we are imbued with a holy spark, that there's divinity in all of us, and that the divine in us is able to access higher level knowledge about our own personal truths. And one of those pieces of higher knowledge that we have access to is what our gender identity is. And so they have interpreted they've mixed this entire thing into their theology, and they have found that they have a calling to become politically active, to support trans rights, and to oppose medicalization. I'm gonna read this for you. This is the Episcopal Church here in the United States. This is our version of the Anglican Church. This is resolution. This is the Conference of Bishops from 2022. Resolved. This is resolution number D066. Resolved that the 80th General Convention celebrates the diversity of human experience, recognizing that we are all made in the image of God. And be it further resolved, the 80th General Convention, the Episcopal Church, advocate for access to gender-affirming care in all forms, social, medical, and any other, and at all ages, as part of our baptismal call to respect the dignity of every human being.
Wow.
This goes on, I won't bore you with it. But this is an Episcopal clerical order that demands that calls all Episcopalians to become politically active on this issue.
Do you remember that Zhenya did the talk in Denver, and this is where I first heard of it, that the origins of all of this experiment in the Netherlands, well, when the Netherlands were trying to justify doing this in the 60s, 70s, it was a Catholic university, the hospital that wanted to do it, the medical ethics board in this Catholic hospital. The guy justified it by saying, the soul and the psyche you cannot change, and so the only possible way to solve the suffering of these people is to alter the body. Like, that was the justification in the Netherlands in the 70s. It's bizarre that it's gone so far though in the US. Like, how did the church get captured? I guess everywhere else did.
Could you say a little bit about how it's going? You spent the last few years going around doing this legislation work. It's so powerful. I think it's really important. Could you tell us a little bit how it's going and what is the reception? Have you noticed change in the famous tide?
Sure. On the legislative front, we have, depending on how you count it, somewhere around 26 or 27 states that have laws to one degree or another that impair or prevent doctors from medicalizing children. As the issue keeps advancing, we're finding more and more opportunities in states that we thought would be difficult to access. And so in the next, most states, their legislative season begins in the late winter and wraps up by the late spring. So we're eyeing targets for 2026, and I think there'll be a few more states that put laws on the books that are similar to the ones that have already passed. There have been legal challenges. There was a law passed in Arkansas that was challenged, and then Tennessee passed a law, and Alabama passed a law. Tactically, the ACLU targeted the Tennessee law to try to bring that up to the Supreme Court. That was known as United States versus Skermeti, and the ACLU lawyer Chase Strangio and the U.S., they argued before the Supreme Court, and it was terrible. Their arguments were terrible. And so a few months later, the Supreme Court issued a 6-3 order saying that no, the state has an interest in regulating this. There's not a special exception because of sex or because of trans identity. The states are clear to pass these sorts of laws. And that has been a big momentum shift in our favor.
Any blue states, though? Any positive developments in a single blue state anywhere?
Yeah, so I guess there's two ways of looking at this. One is I really don't like the term red state or blue state. I like to reject that model because it only captures a mood at a point in time. And our job is to change the mood. It's not universally, but on this issue, it's our job to change the mood. So if we're making good arguments, it doesn't matter if it's a blue state or a red state. We are successful at getting Democrats to break off from the majority who still support trans rights. Our arguments are based on both facts and compassion. And those are things that traditionally Democrats have cared about. More and more Democrats are giving us the time of day. In the states where Democrats have the majority in the legislatures, it is coming to pass now that bills are getting hearings. Even if they're not progressing to the point of being passed, they're nevertheless being taken seriously. For this type of activism, you have to understand that your success comes at the margin. And every time you have an opportunity, you may win and you may fail. Your objective is to create those opportunities as often as possible so that you have a chance to succeed. And the wind is at our back right now.
It is, and well done. I want to ask a couple of things about that because they've been on my mind, and I'm sure you'll give a good defense. What about the kind of the accusation that it's going to push the debate towards very similar to, let's say, abortion clinics, where there'll be sanctuary states, there'll be, you know what I mean, there'll be for and against. It's divisive, and what do you think of that argument?
Yeah, it is divisive. It is polarizing. So it has to be. There are people who believe genuinely and sincerely that this is life-saving care. They don't have any of the facts to back them up, but they are correct. There are major medical organizations that still recommend this as like the best care practices. So they have a strong voice of authority on their side. And even more powerfully, there are children who are being medicalized and they appear to be doing okay. And that sort of testimony, that sort of witnessing is very difficult to argue against. How are they going to be doing 10 years from now? If you ask me, I would bet on them doing very poorly. This is a sort of a black pill to swallow, but almost all of the boys who were in the public lens who transitioned, as soon as they become adults, do you know what they do? OnlyFans.
Oh.
Yeah.
Extremely common.
Sexualized completely.
Correct. Is that healthy? I don't think so. There are people who are maybe on the extremes who say sex work is real work and how, dignity, yada, yada, yada. I really don't think that turning boys into sex mimics as girls and then selling them to quench the thirsts of men who are into that sort of thing is really dignified or humane. But that's something people can argue over.
And there's a big thing, I think it's understated that there are certain men who really go after males who've trans-identified, that's a whole sexual thing. But the second big question I have for you that I know a lot of people talk about, Genspect has taken the position that, this is a mental illness and it's a harmful intervention. And I don't care what age you are, effectively. It's a harmful intervention, full stop. And focusing only on the children. Now, I know there's strategy behind it, but I'd like to hear you discuss why, because I know a lot of people would say all the harm is done for yourself, Cori. You medicalized at 19, not under 18. So, that focusing on children in a way arguably legitimizes the entire harmful intervention.
I'm sure that there could be an argument made in favor of that, but I don't think it's a very strong argument. So let's talk about practicalities right now. If we went out and thought that our objective was to slay the whole dragon, we couldn't do it. So practically, you segment and you say, what are if we break this problem into smaller pieces, what are the pieces that are the ones that are the highest value ones and the ones that we can best justify spending our time and resources on? And it's minors. They cannot consent. They are not worldly. Their bodies are still changing. They have not gone through puberty. We know for a fact that the process of puberty is one of those that seems to break people out of the cross-sex identification. So we are preventing young people from having this opportunity to grow up. They are the most vulnerable, the most helpless, and the ones who have the best chance of developing without permanent medicalization. So when we segment, that's the one that we should spend our resources on.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, but I'm a slay the dragon type, so I really am. I don't see why that's not an achievable goal, because that is my goal. I don't brain development, we talk about it all the time, but until age 25. So this whole focusing on 18 and under just doesn't make any sense to me. It should be 25 and under if you're going to put any kind of age on it. But then what about the
Oh God, no.
30-year-old who's in
Yeah,
a
no age.
terrible
Vulnerable adults.
Exactly. Every single vulnerable person, it's simply not medicine, and it's not an appropriate medical treatment for anyone. Why not slay the whole dragon?
So my personal view is that adults are able to do a lot of harmful things to themselves.
They don't do it to themselves. It's medical ethics. It's a matter of medical ethics. The doctors should not be doing it. You're not inverting your own penis, right? Somebody does that with medical training.
Fair enough. But even when they have to do it through assistance, even if we classify these as cosmetic surgeries and not as medicine, and all of that I agree with. Getting rid of public funding for it because it's not really medicine; it's just cosmetic surgery. If we just think of these as cosmetic surgeries, I'm of the camp that adults should be able to choose cosmetic surgeries. I do think that it's fraud to describe it as medicine. I do think it creates social problems when people make claims that their sex has changed. I think all of those are things that are things that have to be solved. But in terms of what adults do, when competent adults do, sometimes it's tragic. But I'm of the camp that adults have to have the right to choose those things.
Okay, because I like that every single time. It's hilarious. It's happening again today. Every single time, like some guy chops his own leg off or something, everybody on Twitter is tagging me. I've got like hundreds of notifications, and it's like people see man having his leg chopped off and they think Mia. And so it's going right now. This guy had both his legs chopped off. You think we should be doing that then? It's like if a competent person wants to have both their legs chopped off, we should?
I'm not trying to deflect, but I'm just putting this into a maybe a wider view here. Every single day that I drive someplace, I see a man on a motorcycle without any protection, often without any helmet, and there's probably a dozen or more motorcycle deaths just in my city every year because some women too, but largely men decide to jump on these machines without any protection, and then they get killed. Why are we letting them ride motorcycles? Like, we're licensing them, we're selling them, we're letting them operate on the roads, and we know that they're resulting in deaths. Why are we allowing that to happen? So I don't think that amputating anybody's limbs should be done under the auspices of medicine. It's not medicine, it's malpractice. What are we willing to do to stop people from harming themselves? And I think that that's a dangerous road. If you don't know what the limits are, if you don't know where you're willing to stop in order to do good for someone else, it's going to be very difficult for you to see the harm that you're doing in as a side effect.
Yeah. So can I just, you don't have to wear a helmet in your state? Are you in one of those states where you don't even have to wear a helmet on a motorcycle?
Well, I don't even know what the law is, but irrespective of the law, people ride without helmets.
Wow.
Yeah. I used to live in Taiwan where we scooted everywhere. The roads were chaos. And I don't know if you even had to wear a helmet, but the Taiwanese, many of them would wear these tiny little helmets, not covering the face, but they wouldn't clip them. So they just kind of place the helmet on their head and then ride on these insanely dangerous roads. I think that's misguided. I think you might want to at least clip.
I don't think amputating somebody's legs is good. I don't think somebody who wants to have their legs amputated should be enabled to get me out of bed. So this is to answer your question, Mia. If you said, Cori, get out of bed. We're going to go slay a dragon today. I might say, remind me, how big is this dragon?
Are we going to execute this plan? I think you will say.
Yeah. I think I need a little rest today. You go slay the dragon. You come back and let me know how it goes. I cannot get motivated to go take down a dragon if it's not a reasonable thing to pursue. I'm not going to pursue it. I can tell you that what I am pursuing is reasonable because we're getting results. That's the proof that it's reasonable. My calculation is that if we tried to go after the entire thing, we would fail. So you won't get people like me on board if what you say is we cannot segment, we have to do everything. So what you're consciously doing is saying, fine, if you want to help me slay the dragon, whatever. But because we're doing the strategy of tackling smaller problems, you're able to recruit people like me to go handle those sorts of things.
To be clear, I fully support the strategic approach of the way I see it, though, and I don't want to put anything on you, is you start with minors because that is achievable. But once you've done that, you've got to turn your attention to everyone else. It's not the fight is won. We protected 18 and under. Let's all move on with our lives. To me, then, once that's won, you've got to move on because there are many people coming to harm and it has to end.
Yeah, some people are going to move on. For me, the next dragon outside of medicine is to prevent men from being housed in women's prisons. I think that's under-evaluated, but some of the biggest harms are happening with vulnerable women who are being managed, co-located with rapists. Right, that has to end. In the medical dragon is that the support for public insurance for these procedures has to end. Now, that's not the rest of the dragon. It's a smaller dragon. But if you make it so that people who are just basically being played by these doctors for an income aren't able to do so on public insurance anymore, like the reason this whole thing exploded in the United States in the first place is because the price dropped to zero because the public picked up the bill for it. So if you return this back to it being something that is private insurance covered or out of pocket, then the demand is going to decrease quite a lot. That's not the rest of the dragon, but that's another small dragon to go after.
This is good. This is very useful for my Albuquerque speech. I'm going to be thinking about this.
That was really, really, I thought it was really interesting too. I want to talk a little bit more about, I suppose, like in Genspect, our motto is, accept compromise and keep fighting. So it's very much where you're landing there. But I want to talk about the kind of the purist mindset. I've noticed the purists follow you pretty intensely, Cori, because they, you were called Corinna at one point and we were like beleaguered by people saying, stop calling him Corinna. He must be called Cori and we must use he, him,
sure.
la, 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 la. And then I remember you used to have this quip along the lines of, me detransitioning is getting a haircut because, you couldn't, there was no, you can't suddenly get phalloplasty. I know, that's where I'm going. So, it's not as if you turned around and if you got phalloplasty, that would please the purists. And there are purists. No. It would not please them at all. So I feel you're being policed a lot about what you do and stuff like that. This haircut that you got that I've noticed, was that a kind of, there you go, I've detransitioned, or I'm doing
I'm a man now.
Yeah.
I'm a man now. Yeah. No, I have everything behind me in my past. It's not something that is going to ever go away. And so I do have people policing me. I had what was her name? Parker I don't remember her name. Something was going after me for wearing men's clothes because I have breast development, and like that was the thing that bothered her, is that I was wearing a men's sweat. Well, because she just wanted to pick on me. She just wanted to pick on me.
What do you think about the concept about men wearing women's clothes? If you follow me, because you're in particular in those dangerous waters, and it's obviously a heightened issue in my world.
Practically speaking, so even though I wear very, I don't wear clothing that have a lot of gender signifiers, but I have certain limitations about what fit me now. So just practically speaking, I wear clothes that fit. I don't wear outrageous things.
But I'm not talking about you in general. I'm talking about you philosophically. What do you think should be the position really about men and that whole issue?
So I think this is one of the things that caused a lot of outrage a couple of years ago somewhere. Just dress appropriate for, like, don't set out to antagonize people. Be conservative with your choices. That doesn't mean you have to dress like a Republican. It just means be conservative with what you're wearing. Like, look at how we're dressed, right?
Yeah.
Nothing outrageous. Very, very conservative. I have a cardigan over a t-shirt. This is a women's cardigan. Oh my God. But it's not a big deal. I think this.
I would look twice if my husband wore that, I have to admit.
Well, I've met him.
What the hell are you out there?
He'd look strange in it, but I'm sure he wears his own cardigans, right?
No,
I'd like
to. It's not a cardigan.
I'd kill him.
I'd like to point out that I always wear black, and I branched out today into navy blue. I'm trying out something new. It's about as flamboyant as I get.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous color to wear.
Oh, I have. You would not believe how many blue dresses I own.
I think we're all very scared of that whole issue, and I do think it's going to come down the line again many, many times over. And I suppose I work so much with people, and for want of a better phrase, recovery from transition, recovery from the trans delusion. They've lots of different phrases for it. But there seems to be that some women just continuously want to present as male, even if they've detransitioned or stopped their medical transition. And some men seem to want to wear clothes that I would find really uncomfortable, but flouncy clothes, for want of a better phrase. If you follow me, they're a bit flouncy. They like them. They like makeup. They like nail varnish. They like things like that. And I just wonder how society is going to navigate this in years to come. And I think we are at the kind of, we're like, at the forefront of that. And it's proving to be a very tricky issue.
We are, I guess the genie's out of the bottle. As long as we are alive, there are always going to be people living in a transitioned state. That's not something that's going to change. What may change is that we might be able to get away from being bullied into affirming their identity. We may go back to a state of you're somebody who's unusual, but I don't have to think of you as a member of the opposite sex. And in fact, your rights and privileges are not those of the opposite sex. You are somebody who is an outlier of your sex, right? I think we'll get to that point. But there are always going to be people in the United States and Europe that are going to be in a state of transition. And we are not going to be able to determine even how those people identify themselves. And this issue cannot just be swept up and closed. We have to contend with it. So we're always going to be facing these challenges now. With any hope, the medicalization will go down dramatically. But as long as there's a single jurisdiction anywhere in the world, people are going to go there and access it. That's what happened before, and it'll happen again. So this is always going to be present with us from now on. I do think that we need to just focus on reframing it from you're becoming your true self, or you're achieving transition to you are especially unusual among your own kind.
I really kind of was moved by what you said about dragons and slaying them and your next dragon. And for myself, my own, because of the work I've done in this, my own next dragon will be the over-medicalization of all children and of all vulnerable people, and the overdiagnosis and the absolute shit show of the DSM. The entire and psychiatry and psychology and psychotherapy, I'll throw that in as well.
That's a big dragon. Another really big
I'm going to be
dragon.
busy. There is so much to do. We have to choose our dragons. And I think you choose very well, Cori.
Yes.
I realize we're wrapping up, but let me just hit you with this because I'm curious. We talked. I'm on a podcast called Informed Dissent now. We had a topic of SSRIs depress adolescents who are on SSRIs. Their sex drive is depressed, and there's speculation that teenagers who have this depressed sex drive now conflate that with maybe I'm not really my sex. And you say address like over medicalization entirely. I wonder if that sort of dovetails
Massively.
with what you're talking about.
I couldn't agree more, and I had the very same theory, and I did it. I'm doing a PhD in the thing in gender dysphoria among in parents' perceptions of their children's gender dysphoria, and I asked the parents. 443 parents answered the survey, and I asked them, "Where was your kid on SSRI?" with the exact thought, and I was astonished. The majority of them went on SSRIs after. So my theory didn't really. Yeah. I was surprised because I thought that was actually a key, but not my 443. But maybe it's still
You've
there's
got some
others.
good data there.
Yeah,
I think it's still a factor. Remember, there used to be an ICD diagnosis. I think it was sexual maturation disorder or something, and that one dropped off as gender incongruence or whatever it was before that surged. And I do think that there's something about developing your sexual identity that solidifies your identity in general and who you are, and you're less likely to get thrown off course if you have if you have long-term intimate relationships and you have a solid sexual identity. I think there's something to it.
I think so. Could I ask you one last question, Cori? You don't have to
Yeah.
answer it if you don't want to. Am I right in thinking that, like, post-medical transition, like having sexual long-term relationships is an incredibly difficult road?
Oh yeah. One of the reasons why I feel so passionately and that I am an activist and that I talk so openly about this is there's something that I did not understand until I was in my 30s. Because one of the most important means of accessing this knowledge I didn't have available to me anymore. In a relationship, sex is such an important means of bonding. And if you cannot enjoy sex, if your partner wants you to feel pleasure and you don't feel any, and you cannot reflect that back, that emotional part that is connected to the physical part is something that you cannot achieve. You cannot reciprocate that love. That's what makes the relationships, among the other complications, the many other complications. But if you physically can't return that passion because you have an injury from the surgery, your ability to sustain a relationship is extremely impaired. And that's why I want kids to be able to grow up with their whole bodies so that they can have the opportunity to understand that before they make any changes.
Right. And that's honestly something that probably in your 20s you're still not figuring out. It's not something any teenager could understand.
No.
This is maybe too personal, so you don't have to answer this, but am I correct in thinking that you never actually had sex before the surgery?
No, I had a belief that I was I don't know, it doesn't even make sense. It was a childish belief that
Yeah, we're entitled to childish beliefs at 19.
Yeah.
Of course. Okay.
Yeah. I was waiting to become myself before I did that.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Shall we
Thanks,
stop
Cori.
there? Thank you.
Thanks a million. That was powerful.
Wow.